Hello, my loves. Today we're diving a bit deeper into the topic of persistence and how to really not give up on your journey, on your path, because it can be so challenging when you are stepping into a new version of yourself, changing your self-concept, consciously manifesting a new reality for yourself. It can be really hard to not give up because there can be obstacles in your way. Things can look very different from how you want them to look. You can start doubting yourself. There's a lot that can happen internally and externally, and sometimes it can be really challenging to not go back and forth and to not give up. That's what we're talking about today. If you are new here, my name is Lorena. I am a self-concept coach, mentor, and guide. I am here to teach you how to change your state of being, how to step into a new version of yourself so that you can create everything that you want and that you don't have to let your past dictate your future or define your future. You can create something new any moment, and I'm here to support you with that. If you like that kind of content, make sure you're subscribed. If you're not already, like this video, leave me a comment, and if you really want to support me, then I also appreciate any shares. Share it with a friend, share it with your audience if you have one, if this helps you in any way. And for those of you who are curious about working with me, I have a coaching program, which is my absolute masterpiece, my baby, my biggest gift to you, and you can find information about that in the description box below. It's called Recreate Yourself, and it's a transformational journey of 12 weeks of you getting coached by me personally so we can really change your state and change your self-concept at a really deep and profound level, and you'll come out of that transformed. But now let's get into the video. So I want to start this off by asking you a question, and I encourage you to ask that question to yourself and maybe comment below if you feel called to answer. And that's: when your circumstances are not in alignment with what you desire, what feelings does that bring up in you? What thoughts does that bring up in you? What are you making that mean about yourself and what's possible for you? What arises for you when your circumstances are not in alignment with what you want? So sit with that question, and I'm asking you this because what I want to share with you in the next few minutes, however long this video is going to be, is how you can navigate it when your circumstances are not the way you want them to be. I'm going to give you a few tips, what you can do to ensure that you're persisting, that you're not giving up, that you stay on track, stay on the path to your vision rather than going back and forth or letting doubts take over. The first thing is to make sure that you really want it enough. This sounds incredibly simple, but really it's so important. It's why with my clients, I start getting clarity on their state and their vision for the future, because the clearer your vision is, the more targeted you are, the more you allow yourself to desire it without shaming yourself for it, without judging yourself for it, without doubting the desire that comes through, without questioning why it's there, or rather whether you can have it or whether you're supposed to have it. The more you can eliminate these doubts and these worries and these judgments primarily, the more focused you can stay on your goal. Because what happens very often is that we start questioning our desires. When obstacles get in our way, we might think, maybe this isn't meant for me. Maybe I'm not supposed to have this. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. This sometimes stems from you not giving enough energy to the desire in the first place. You're not wanting it enough. Very often you may think you want it enough, but think about it this way. If you truly deeply want something, right? You want it so much, and it really fills your whole body with joy to think about that possibility. You're not going to give up. You're automatically not going to give up, because any obstacle will just be an obstacle. It will not be a reason to give up. It will not be a reason to throw in the towel, because you want it so deeply. So ask yourself, with whatever desire where you go back and forth constantly, or you shift back and forth, or you feel like your state isn't in alignment, do you want it enough? If you don't, then maybe there's more behind that to uncover. Then maybe that desire is either blocked through insecurities that you need to integrate or shadows that you need to bring to the surface. It may also be that it's not your desire in the first place, that there's maybe something else that is connected to that desire, right? This is what you see sometimes when people think they desperately want to be with a specific person, or they want things to unfold a specific way, but it's only because of a certain feeling that they think it's going to give them, or it's only because it validates them in a certain way if this were to unfold in this way, and the core desire behind it is actually a different one. And if you then are able to go to this core desire, to establish what is the true desire behind this, you can follow that desire and let that desire lead you rather than following more or less a false desire. And I use that term loosely because I don't think there is such a thing as a false desire, but there are sometimes desires that aren't in their fullest expression. There are sometimes desires that seem like that's the desire, but really there's a root core desire beneath that is the true thing that you want, that really lights your heart on fire. So it's important for you to get to the root of what it is that you truly deeply want, because the more you can immerse yourself into that, the more you can let your desire lead you, because otherwise you're going to let your fears lead you, and you're going to avoid fears, and you're going to avoid obstacles, and no growth happens through avoiding obstacles. The path to your vision will very likely be plastered with obstacles, especially if you have a big vision. If you have a big dream, if you want to establish a powerful business where you impact the world, or you want to have an epic love story, it doesn't mean it's going to necessarily be super challenging, but you're likely going to make mistakes, you're likely going to fail, you're likely going to have challenging emotions. And if you're running from all that, you're not going to get to that big vision. So you will need to let your desire lead you. And for that, you need to know your desire and you need to want it enough. The second thing is to find community that believes in you as much as you believe in yourself. Let's be honest, a lot of us, especially if you have a big vision, if you have big dreams that are completely different maybe from what your experience is at the moment or where you're coming from, right? If you're coming from a completely different background to what you want to achieve, you're probably going to be surrounded by people who are not supporting your vision, or are not fully believing in your vision, or are not seeing it as possible, or don't really believe it's going to happen for you. That might not be with ill intent. It might not be that they don't want to believe in you. It could just be from their own limited perception that that is happening, right? But if you're coming from a completely different background to what you want to experience, you're probably going to have people around you who are not in alignment with your vision or who are filled with doubt. And you hear a lot of people in the manifestation community, for example, say to just not listen to those, that they are just reflecting your doubts and your fears anyway, and that, you should just keep going and not listen to it. And that's not necessarily wrong, right? People can reflect your own doubts and insecurities, because if you deeply believe in yourself, it doesn't really matter who's around you. If you deeply believe in your vision and nobody around you does, you're gonna get there anyway. The only person who really needs to believe in it is you. But it does make it harder, because if you have support around you, if you have people around you who deeply believe in your vision too, you're gonna be more empowered, and it's gonna be amplified, and it's gonna be easier for you to keep believing in it even when things maybe get hard. So rather than thinking you need to push through and do it all on your own and just keep believing in yourself, yes, do that. Keep believing in yourself and your vision, regardless of what people around you say. And surround yourself with people who actually believe in you too. I'm a big believer in finding community, hiring mentors, and having people around you who support your vision deeply, who inspire you, who maybe have what you want. This is why I do the work I do, so I can support you in this. And this is also why in my coaching program, I have a big community aspect. So everybody who's inside can support each other, because we really thrive in community. Having people around you who believe in you as much as you do is really going to strengthen your dedication so much more. You're going to stay so much more committed to your path, and you're going to find it a lot easier to persist because suddenly you're not alone in it anymore. And you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it in an isolated way. You've got nothing to prove to anybody but yourself. So accept help, ask for help, hire support if you need it, and find community that supports you in your vision and that believes in you deeply as well. The third point, and this is a very important one, is to not let your circumstances dictate the outcome. So this is where it gets hard to believe, right? If you've made a certain experience over and over again in your life, it's difficult to believe that that will change. But the fact is, just because something has been a certain way for a long time, or just because your reality looks a certain way right now, doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. In fact, it most likely isn't. There's a first time for everything, right? Even if you've never experienced something before, it doesn't mean you're never gonna experience it ever. So allow yourself that possibility to believe that things can change, because nothing is permanent and they inevitably will change anyway. And it makes sense. Validate that for yourself. Acknowledge that it's hard, because of course, if you've always lived in poverty, it's hard for you to believe that you can create wealth and abundance. Of course, if you've never had a happy, healthy relationship, it's hard for you to believe that you can be loved in the way you want to be loved. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Doesn't mean how things are is gonna stay like this forever. They're not gonna stay like this forever. Allow yourself to believe in possibility. Allow yourself to have a positive outlook on life. Not to force the negative away, but to really embrace that good things are possible, and most likely they're gonna happen to you, because why wouldn't they? Number 4 is about taking action. Do not wait for your circumstances or your state to be perfect before taking action towards your vision. So in the previous point, I told you not to let your circumstances dictate the outcome, and that's because they don't. They don't dictate the outcome. However, if you do give them power, they will dictate the outcome. If you feel like your circumstances first need to shift, and first you need to see change, and first they need to be perfect in order for you to allow yourself to take action, or if you feel like you need to be in the perfect state of being, you need to get your energy completely right before you get to take action, you're gonna wait for a really long time. I see a lot of people who wait until they are ready or until they see change before they actually take action towards their vision. And that's not how it works, because you're gonna wait forever if you wait until you're ready. You will be ready when you choose to be ready. For example, I've had people join Recreate Yourself. I've also had people not join because the circumstances weren't perfect, because they felt like they couldn't afford it, or they felt like they didn't have the time to commit to this program. And whilst this program does require a financial investment, it does require a time investment, there's never going to be the perfect time to do something like this. There's always going to be a risk associated with it. You're never going to, especially if you have limiting beliefs around money, you're never going to feel so wealthy and abundant. You can have millions in your bank account and you will not feel secure to invest in yourself if you live from scarcity, right? For example, I had a client who was going through a really challenging time when she decided to join Recreate Yourself, and she almost didn't do it because she said, I'm going through a really rocky time where my circumstances aren't really fully aligned. She was going through a separation at the time, and her living situation wasn't ideal for this program. She had a very busy schedule and she didn't know in how far she could commit time-wise to the program. And she joined anyway, and she decided that she was ready before the circumstances were perfect, and it turned out to be the exact perfect time for her to join. Now, she could have waited until things were perfect, but they probably never would have been perfect, because there is always something that will come up, right? It's the same with the financial situation. If you want to invest in something, you have the hunch to do that, but then you're waiting until you have a certain amount of money. Are you really going to feel safe with that certain amount of money? I mean, I'm not telling you what to think or do. Maybe you are actually going to feel safe. I can only speak from experience that when I had like a lot less money than I do now, I had the exact same fears that I still have now to this day. So it's not about not having the fears. It's not about waiting for your state or your circumstances to be perfect. It's about taking that action before it's perfect because you trust yourself. Also, in other scenarios, I see this sometimes happen with people who want to start their own business and they just don't get going. They just don't get started because they are waiting for the perfect time, or they are waiting until they get their energy perfectly right. Imagine if every time my energy was off, because of course I'm human, my energy isn't always perfect. Imagine if during those days I wouldn't show up. Imagine during those days I would have to cancel all of my coaching calls because my energy wasn't perfect. You can't let that hold you back. You're not always going to be in the perfect state. Don't wait for your state or your circumstances to be perfect before you take action. Consistency is really key as well. So for something like a relationship, for something like a business endeavor, you need to stay consistent with it rather than every time you don't feel good, you take a break and you disappear from whatever social media or you isolate yourself from your relationship. That's not how it works. You need to show up in your fullest expression, even if that's not the perfect state. And with that, I'm not saying that your state isn't important. It's obviously very important, but sometimes you need to take action first to even get you into that state, right? Sometimes I wake up in a state where I'm like, I really can't be bothered, but then I take that action that I would have taken from that quote unquote perfect state, and taking that action is what brings me into the energy. So sometimes you need to leap first. Sometimes you need to take the risk first rather than waiting to first get your state right or to first have the circumstances improve. Your circumstances are going to improve when you show up differently. Your circumstances are going to improve when you take the action, not if you wait for it. Sometimes you need to allow yourself to show up in the self-concept that you want to step into before you are it. You allow yourself to feel it before you feel it. You allow yourself to be it before you are it. Number 5, find reasons not to give up. So find reasons to keep going. If there are a lot of reasons around you to not keep going, you need to find the reasons that allow you to keep going. So one thing that you can do to get into this energy is to look towards the end. Think about how you would feel on the other side of it. Think about how you would feel once you have the success that you want. Think about how you would feel once you have that relationship that you want. Think about how you would feel once you get the support that you want. Think about how that would feel and use that as your motivation to keep going even when things are hard. In other words, imagine what's on the other side of your persistence. Imagine what it feels like when you get to the other side and you look back and you say, that wasn't easy, but it was worth it. A journey of transformation, a journey of stepping into a new version of yourself is not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. That's actually a phrase that I got from one of my clients. She said that in her testimonial of Recreate Yourself, where she said, this program isn't for the faint-hearted, but it was worth it. And that's exactly what this journey of transformation, of changing your self-concept is like. It's not easy, but it's going to be worth it. It's a bit like the journey from caterpillar to butterfly. It's not a comfortable or a pretty journey, or the journey of giving birth. It's messy. It's full of blood and liquids that you don't want to think about. It's full of body changes. It's full of pain, but it's worth it because that result is worth it. The result of the butterfly, the result of birth is worth it. So think about the other side. If you trust that what's on the other side is going to be worth it, you can persist through it because you know it's going to pass. Number 6 is to befriend failure. I have a very healthy relationship to failure these days, and failure used to be my biggest fear. I used to be so afraid to fail because I made it mean all kinds of things about myself. And I did a lot of shadow work, a lot of shadow integration on this. So if you have a fear of failure, or this is something that is blocking you, the idea that you might fail, or the fear of any emotions that might arise with your quote unquote failure, I recommend diving into these shadows. It's what we do in Recreate Yourself as well. We really dive into these, I'm gonna say blockages, because this fear of certain emotions and subconscious or unconscious suppression of identities or emotions or states can block you, because you can push it away unconsciously so much that you're actually starting to sabotage yourself. But the reason I invite you to befriend failure is actually because, to me, failure these days doesn't even exist anymore, because failure would not stop me. I sat down recently with some of my desires and I asked myself, what if I failed? What if I failed at this? What if this didn't work out? And I realized that I'm just not accepting no for an answer either way. If I got a no, I would just try again. I would just pivot. I would find a new strategy. I would maybe try a different way. I would persist again and again and again, because that's how much I want it, right? This goes back to you wanting it enough. This goes back to you letting your desire lead you. Because if after failure, after falling down, you get back up and you try again, not push, not resist, but maybe pivot and try a different way. If that's what you're doing, then failure doesn't really exist for you. Then you're not going to be afraid to fail, because it's just a stumble. It's just a little falter. It's not the end. And 7 is find the lessons in the circumstances instead of resisting them. So this means you're turning into the impartial observer. You're coming out of that ego role, of that ego perspective, and you're looking at, okay, what can I learn from this circumstance? What can I learn from this pain? What can I learn from this situation, from this event, from this emotion? If something doesn't work out, if something goes wrong, if something doesn't feel good, what can you learn from it? How can you do it differently next time? So again, this is not about resisting. This is not about pushing through with resistance. That is not what persistence means, my friends. I see this over and over again, that people think persistence means pushing through with force and ignoring everything else. That's not what it means. It means learning the lessons from what you're perceiving, what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, and finding a new way to navigate it. And this comes back to the idea that failure doesn't exist. This comes back to the idea that you're not letting circumstances dictate the outcome. Because ask yourself this question, and this is a question that I ask my clients all the time when they're in like a state of distress or fear or worry that they're always going to be stuck or that it's not going to work out for them. I tend to ask, if you truly knew that your vision was inevitable, if you knew it was going to happen no matter what, how would you react to this circumstance right here, right now? How would you react to this failure? How would you react to this block? What would you make that mean? Would you even care as much? And you know what? When I ask my clients this question, and when I ask myself this question, when I have the same things come up, it immediately relaxes their nervous system, because they realize they've just been trapped in their head, because you don't know the outcome. You don't know that the outcome's going to be good. You really don't. That's what taking risks is about. But you also don't know that it will be bad. So if you don't know, you may as well leap into the unknown. You may as well trust and believe in the best possible outcome. And I know it's not easy, it's very simple, but it's something that you do need to constantly remind yourself of, because when your circumstances show you something else, when your emotions arise, when things feel heavy, when you're stressing about the future, when you're having anxiety come up, of course that's going to take over. So you need to make a conscious effort to bring yourself back, to step out of yourself and to see, okay, where am I at here? And how can I reframe this? And what are the facts that I actually have? If this is something that you're struggling with, I invite you to check out my video about managing intrusive thoughts, where I speak about this as well. And you know, this is also why mentorship is so powerful. It's a lot easier when you have somebody who supports you, who brings you back to that truth, to that vision, to your state, to your alignment, because your brain will want to trick you. And it takes consistency and persistence. Long story short, don't give up. If you get a no, turn it into a yes. Keep going. Do not accept failure. Do not accept circumstances as the final outcome if that's not what you want it to be. And if you want to dive deep with me, if you want to radically transform your self-concept, I invite you to apply to Recreate Yourself. Applications are actually currently open. You can find the link in the description box below. And leave me a comment below and let me know what your key takeaway is. And I will see you in next week's video. I'm sending you lots of love.